So the first method that I'm going to write in this video is the max method. This method is going to receive two inputs and compare the value of the input and return the maximum one, the one with the maximum value. So what I want to write the code for is a method for finding max between two numbers. So that's the method. So it is going to receive two numbers as input and return the one with the maximum value. Right? So that's the method that I'm going to write the code for. So static int max, so its name is max. It's going to get two numbers as the input. Both of them, for example, here are integers. So int num1, int num2. Right? So now I'm going to compare the value of these two integers, right? How? By writing the if statements. So if the value of the first number is greater than the value of the other number, I'm going to return the value of the first one. Else, I'm going to return the value of the second one. So that's I'm going to write the code for. Okay. So if num1 be greater than num2, return num1. Else, return num2. So that's the method. Okay. So I'm going to call this method inside the main method of my program. First, I'm going to declare and initialize two variables, right? And then I'm going to print these two variables as well as the maximum one. So both of them are going to be integers. Int I, for example, be 5. Int j be 2. Then here int k be max I and j. And finally, I'm going to print the maximum number. So the maximum between for concatenation, right? Between I and j plus j plus and is k, right? So that's the program. This is the method for maximum, computing the maximum number, And here I have called this method. Let's run this program and see the result. So the maximum between 5 and 2 is 5. Right? Okay, so here I'm going to have a method swap. And in this method, I'm going to swap the value of two variables. So what I'm going to write is the method for swapping two variables. Static void swap int n1 and int n2. Right? So here I will define an intermediate variable and we'll call it temp int temp be n1 and then n1 be n2 and n2 be temp, right? And finally I'm going to print system.out.println. After swapping n1 is plus n1 for concatenating the next one. And here n2 is n2, right? So that's the method. But what about in the main method of my program? I will have two numbers, num1 and num2, int num1 be 1, int num2 be 2, right? And I'm going to call this swap. So swap num1 and num2. So let's see. After swapping, n1 is 2, right? But we have here 1. And n2 is 1, right? So in this example, I'm going to use some math methods. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to create some random numbers. So for example, create 10 random numbers add them together and then I'm going to compute the square of each number and then I'm going to add the square to, for example, add them together, right? And finally, I'm going to compute the mean of the numbers, and then print the results. So that's what I'm going to do, right? First, I will have 10 numbers, right? So I need a variable for 10. It should be constant, right? Final int count be 10. Then a variable for holding each number. A variable for holding the summation. So sum be 0. A variable for square sum is 0, right? So these are the variables. So now I'm going to create random numbers, 10 random numbers. So I need 4. For example, for loop, I can implement that with for loop. Int I be 0, I less than count, and I plus plus. So number be each time I want to create a random number. So math dot random. And here I'm going to round this number. So math dot round. And then I'm going to convert this to int, right? And finally, I'm going to print the result, the number. Each time I'm going to print that number. In the next line, I'm going to add the number to sum. So sum plus equal number, right? And then add the square of the number to square sum. So square sum be math.pow, power, right? The first one is number, the second one is 2. Number to the power of 2, right? And after having the summation, I can find the mean of the numbers. So double mean be sum divided by count. And finally, I'm going to print the mean, right? So the mean plus mean. Here I can say the number is plus number. and I can print the sum and sum square as well. So the sum and sum square. So here I have sum, and here I will have sum square, right? Square sum, sorry. Square sum, right? So that's the program. That's the program that I'm using some of the methods in math, in the class math. So I've used random, round, power, right here. So these are some methods, and you can use some more methods if you need. So let's see the result of this program. Okay, so the number is 1, then 0, then 1, then 1. So finally the mean is 0.8, the sum is 8.0, and the sum square is 8.0. Okay, so in this example, I'm going to compute the factorial of an integer, right? So first, I'm going to ask the user to print to enter a non-negative integer. So here system.out.println. Please enter a non-negative integer. And then I'm going to save the user's input inside the variable, right? So I'm going to create an object from scanner. So scanner SB new scanner system.in. And here int nb s dot read next int. So I'm going to create a method named factorial, and in this method is going to receive an integer as an input, and will compute the factorial of that integer. So static long factorial int n. So if n is 0, it's going to return 1, else it's going to return n multiplied by factorial of n minus 1, right? So that's this method, the method for factorial. So in the main method, I need to call this method. And then print the result and the output. So system dot out dot println factorial of factorial of n is factorial. Right? Let's run the code. So let's see what's the factorial of, for example, 12. So as you see, we have here the factorial of this number is as follows.